Hello, everyone. I believe we are live. I might have tricked you a little bit this time since I set it at 7:05 instead of just 7. I'm waiting for it to pop up on my YouTube channel, and it's not, which is interesting. There we go. Okay. There we go. Make sure that I have that muted so I don't get you guys with double audio. Anyway, so hello. I see that we already have some people in the house. We have Cap'n Mac 82. We have Mr. Hellspawn, Tim Allen, Lone Wolf. I read your comment before I went live, and until I got confused for a second, and I thought you were saying that I needed to do a background check on the people in the chat for some reason, because I don't know, man. It's been a day. Blue River Cat, Squid Monkey, John Morgan, Tim Allen, Iron Daisies. Who else do we have here? Jesse Meek, Frosty Leprechaun says, Black Rifle Coffee. Aaron Miller, Andy Robichaud. Hello, Andy. Scary O'Dwyer. Frank. Michael Quintero is in from South Texas, and he says, Texas, Texas, Texas. Let's see. Who else? Fish and Golf and Guns. Dave Smith. Jameson Wilfon. Ta-da from Hawaii checking in. Mr. Jones. Shadow Bear. Let's see. Oof. I can't pronounce this. Liham Shid? I know I'm not pronouncing that right. Hugh Galbraith, Talisman, Mr. Rover Pilot, also from Texas. I will actually hopefully be visiting Texas, but only for a couple days next month for an event with the Mises Institute. To go see Ron Paul. Super exciting. Benjamin Sholnick is in. Kurt Dare. Jose Vigila, and Rose Blight, Stephen Vicanti, Go Fishing Eric, lots of people in the house, Randy Behrman and Kitchen Cop, to name just a few of the folks that are here. Wayne Underwood says that he was fingerprinted for his CCW today. Congratulations. It's amazing. Well, I guess it isn't amazing that there are places that are still doing those, because really it's only Massachusetts that wasn't doing that. And Joe Pelton is here. My old neighbor. Hello. I am free and warm, actually. Hopefully that big storm didn't take out any big trees around your house or on your house. I heard that a lot of people had some damage up in Massachusetts. Anyways, well, we don't have, looks like we don't have Trash Man today. So, no intro for today. So I guess we're just going to dive right into it. Let's see. Well, so some of you I know watched the debates with me earlier this week. And it was pretty interesting. The star of the show seemed to be the Fly. I'm seeing memes all over social media with the Fly that, holding like a Jo Jorgensen sign, or saying that flies always land on shit because a fly landed on Hillary Clinton last election cycle. Seemed to be the star of the show. Or there's conspiracy theories that it was some sort of like Democratic drone trying to, I don't know, destroy things. Chris Phillips, thank you. Liberty Doll said he said howdy to me about an hour ago. Very cool. So let's get... Oh, Trash Man says the re-edit crap again, so sent to Patreon. Okay, so we're gonna open Trash Man's intro here over on Patreon. Oh, good, it kept me logged in this time. So, let's see. So Trash Man says it's doing that edit and try again crap again. So he says, live from the land of pickup trucks, gun racks, and good old boys, it's the lady who sneaks a Boston Lager with her biscuits and gravy, a mint julep with her D&D, and barbecue with her disc golf. And with that, here's Dolly. That was so random. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Well, so it seems to be that the general consensus is that Pence won the debates. And what's interesting, so a couple of interesting points about the debate. Number one, so we watched it here and we used C-SPAN because they actually don't copyright claim their debates or their government content, anything that's any sort of debates or town halls or anything like that. They generally, actually, you can go right on their website and it says that they do all of it as public domain. So the only thing that C-SPAN requires for you to show any of their material, even if it's the material in the entirety, like the debates, is to make sure that you say, hey, it's C-SPAN, and you show their logo on the stream, which is exactly what we did. Nevertheless, I got not a copyright strike, but a copyright claim from a random news company in Argentina, which was strange. I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know what the title of their video is, but they say that I stole a 1-minute clip from the debates from them and put it in my video. That's the only thing that's getting a copyright claim in the entire hour and a half, 2 hours that we did it. So of course I fought it. And so now everything is sitting in escrow, and basically what happens when there's a copyright claim, someone makes a claim, I have to counter it, but whether or not they accept my counter has nothing to do with YouTube. It's the person that made the claim that can accept or reject the counter. So honestly, it's 50-50 that I could possibly win that. YouTube never actually looks into it as far as I know, but I said right on there that, hey, it's public domain, and I copy and pasted the link to C-SPAN's website. So we'll see what happens with that. Q says, did you see the Massachusetts ATF just made owners of the Honey Badger AR pistol felons? Very weird stuff going on with that. I heard a little bit about it. Rob and Patty told me a little bit about it, but I haven't checked into it that much. Fine 81393 says, is it just me or did Pence look like he was doing a Race Bannon cosplay from Johnny Quest? Oh! Oh, that took me a second. I just read a disturbing comment that I can't. I can't put that one up on the screen. I can't read that out loud. Sorry. Another interesting thing that came up with the debates is a friend of mine who is left-leaning, more liberal, watched the stream, and he said that when I was talking about Kamala's shit-eating grin, he said that I had the same grin on my face, and I don't really know how to interpret that. I don't know about that. B. Harris says hi from New Hampshire. Oh, Shane Bushta says, got your new patch in the mail. I don't have mine yet, so I don't really know what the dealio is with that. Everyone else got them except for me. I was told that it was sent out. I got an email with a tracking number saying that it was delivered, but it's not actually sitting in the P.O. box, as far as I know. So I'll have to check it out. The fabulous Lomax says Race Bannon is just Pence in his spare time. And yes, so Jared over at Guns and Gadgets did do a video about the Honey Badger issue. Oh, and my aunt is here. Hello. Kind of like, I don't know, feeling my brain isn't focusing well today, so we're just going to plug along. And as far as the next round of debates, someone in the chat just mentioned the next round of debates has been canceled, sort of. So what happens, as you know, is Trump tested positive for COVID. And because he tested positive for COVID, that also created issues with this last debate between Pence and Harris, because there was issues. We talked about it for a few minutes before it started of whether or not to have plexiglass and whether the plexiglass actually worked. And there was people saying that the plexiglass doesn't do anything and doesn't protect anyone, even though that's the same thing that they're putting at cash registers and in restaurants and at schools. But okay, so they're saying it doesn't work. They spaced Pence and Harris 12 feet apart instead of 7. And there were still people saying that the whole thing was terribly irresponsible because at the end, when the candidates walked off stage, you know, Pence wasn't wearing a mask, neither was Kamala, but Kamala's boyfriend, husband, whatever he was wearing a mask, and Pence's wife wasn't. So there was all this hullabaloo. You know, the Pences don't wear masks. They don't care about people. They don't care about people's safety, blah, 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 blah. So Trump tested positive for COVID. He was in the hospital for, I believe, 3 days. He came out. He went back to work at the White House. He's doing his thing. And now, depending on what day they're saying that he got it, would possibly put him at only being 13 days post-illness at the next debate, and rather than the required 14. So because of that, the Biden camp said that they wanted a virtual debate, and Trump said, nuh-uh, no way, not happening. So I believe that's where things stand right now. I feel like they can't not have a debate. But I mean, the last one wasn't really much of a debate anyways, to be frank. So we'll see what happens with that. Jesse Meek says, got my stickers about 2 weeks ago. Yours might be in mass. LOL. They're not supposed to be. I gave the new P.O. box in South Carolina. Cody Theus says, I received number 10 of 100 patch batch last week. Yeah, everyone got them last week. So I don't know. I'll have to check out the tracking number again and go talk to the post office, I guess. Mr. Rover Pilot says, my lib friends going nuts over Trump supporters attempt to kidnap Whitmer. I can find nothing on it. Is it another hoax? Your thoughts, predictions. Okay. So I haven't read on this yet, so I don't have all the details, but I did listen to a few YouTube videos about it. So as far as I can tell, there was indeed a coup planned against Whitmer. And I was hesitant to talk about this because I feel like it's a thing that YouTube's going to strike me for, but you guys asked, so I guess we'll do it. So to my understanding, there were 2 groups of people. There were a group of 7 dudes and a group of 6 dudes. All of them got arrested to make the 13. So they're saying that the FBI infiltrated militia groups, and that some of these groups have been staking out Whitmer's vacation homes, and have been training, doing different training drills and marching drills and different kinds of trainings with a plan to kidnap Whitmer before the election because of all the crazy unconstitutional things she's been doing. And indeed, the things that she has been doing are in fact unconstitutional. They were ruled unconstitutional by the Michigan State Supreme Court. I'm actually working on a video all about it right now. So, to my understanding, these people had some sort of plot to kidnap her before the election. Now, the news media is calling it militia groups. I'm not really sure if it was a militia group because they were pretty anti-Trump. And in fact, they described themselves as anarchists. And I don't believe that it's ANCAPs. I'm pretty sure that it is ANCOMs, your Antifa and stuff like that. Nonetheless, and I mean, there are far left groups that have militias. The John Brown Gun Club is one of them, and we've talked about them on the channel before, actually. They go out and they do their training and all of that, and they say that they're doing it so they can fight the right wing and white supremacists and all of that fun stuff. So these guys had this plot. The FBI infiltrated them, got them all arrested, and the media is calling them right wing when they're left anarchists, as far as I can tell. That's about all that I know right now. So it's not a hoax. Whitmer did make a statement blaming Trump for it, even though the men involved were anti-Trump, but that's just how things go. So, I mean, I can see if we can find some more information on this real quick. I did save some articles in my Feedly, actually. So we'll do that, and then we'll jump over to something that is sort of related, since we were just talking about Trump. Let's see. Oh, Biden also blamed Trump for the attempt on Whitmer, apparently. Right. So here we go. This, I don't really want to use this source. I don't really trust this source. Let's see. Well, okay. We're going to use this just for the photo. So this is from Breitbart. I typically don't use Breitbart. I usually, actually, if they put out articles, I then go and take their sources and see what they came from, because a lot of people just don't trust Breitbart, and it's really controversial, and it's a really good way to be completely discredited by using Breitbart, even though they do have some really legitimate information a lot of times. So this is a picture of one of the folks that was involved in this plan. That is definitely 100% an ANCOM flag. So this is definitely a far left anarchist who was involved in this. So the FBI did not name a specific political ideology. The FBI's criminal complaint alleges that the members of the group talked about creating a society that followed the U.S. Bill of Rights and where they could be self-sufficient. Two apparently met at a Second Amendment rally, is what this says. Let's see if I can find. So here's the actual criminal complaint. So the folks they arrested were Adam Fox, Barry Croft, Ty Garbin, Caleb Franks, Daniel Harris, and Brandon Caserta. And Brandon Caserta was the one in that picture right there. So they had been planning this, I believe, since June. And let's see. This alleges conspiracy to kidnap the governor of Michigan. In early 2020, the FBI became aware through social media that a group of individuals were discussing the violent overthrow of certain government and law enforcement components. I'm going to zoom into this for you guys. Among those individuals identified were Croft and Fox. Through electronic communications, Croft and Fox agreed to unite others in their cause and take violent action against multiple state governments that they believe are violating the U.S. Constitution. It is kind of weird because, like, in my experience, ANCOMs don't typically talk about the Constitution. I mean, they talk about maybe social contracts or something. But that's clearly like an Antifa ANCOM flag behind the guy. ANCAPs use black and yellow, like the Libertarians. Okay, so on June 6th, Croft, Fox, and approximately 13 other people from several states gathered in Dublin, Ohio. CSH1, I believe that is one of the agents, was present at this meeting. The group talked about creating a society that followed the U.S. Bill of Rights and where they could be self-sufficient. They discussed different ways of achieving this goal, from peaceful endeavors to violent actions. At one point, several members talked about state governments they believed were violating the U.S. Constitution, including the government of Michigan and Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Several members talked about murdering tyrants or taking a sitting governor. The group decided they needed to increase their numbers and encouraged each other to talk to their neighbors and spread their message. As part of that recruitment effort, Fox reached out to a Michigan-based militia group. Okay, so that's why they're saying that a militia group is involved, because these anarchists reached out to a militia group, apparently. The militia group had already been brought to the attention of the FBI by a local police department in March of 2020. That makes me think of that infographic and warning letter that was given out to different police departments by the ATF, warning against like militias and like boog boys. I wonder if that's connected. When members of the militia group were attempting to obtain the addresses of local law enforcement officers. At the time, the FBI interviewed a member of the militia group who was concerned about the group's plans to target and kill police officers, and that person agreed to become a CHS. Okay, so this was an informant. And then, as reported by an informant and confirmed by the FBI, the militia group periodically meets for field training exercises on private property in remote areas of Michigan, where they engage in firearms training and tactical drills. The informant told the FBI that a field training exercise on June 14th, one of the founders of the militia group said that he had been introduced to Fox. And they talked to him during that meeting. They continued meeting throughout June. They talked about meeting at a Second Amendment rally, trying to recruit more people, as it said earlier. And Fox said that he needed 200 men to storm the Capitol building in Lansing, Michigan, and take hostages, including the governor. Fox explained they would try the governor of Michigan for treason, and he said they would execute the plan before the November 2020 election. So it sounds like they were planning to try and kidnap her and hold her for their own trial, and told some FBI informants about it, is what it sounds like. And this is where things get like pretty crazy, actually. As part of Fox's operational security, the attendees met in the basement of the shop, which was accessed through a trap door hidden under a rug on the main floor. That is some crazy stuff. Fox collected all of their cell phones in a box and carried them upstairs to prevent any monitoring, but this informant was wearing a recording device and captured the audio from the meeting, during which they discussed plans for assaulting the state capitol, countering law enforcement first responders, and using Molotov cocktails to destroy police vehicles. I mean, it almost sounds like they're more in line with like the BLM folks than your typical militia. The attendees also discussed plans for an additional meeting during the first weekend of July, when they would also conduct firearms and tactical training. This guy also live streamed a video to a private Facebook group that included the informant, in which he complained about the judicial system in the state of Michigan controlling the opening of gyms. Fox referred to Governor Whitmer as this tyrant bitch and stated, "I don't know, boys, we got to do something. You guys link with me on our other location system. Give me some ideas of what we can do." And this video has been preserved by the FBI and is going to be used as evidence. This is actually, I mean, they did get lots of information here. I mean, look at how long this is. This is crazy. Wow. Wow. Okay. Let's see. So they did some more training. Let's see if we can pick out some of the really big things. Okay, so over the weekend of July 10th to 12th, they did more training and combat drills. They attempted to construct an IED using black powder balloons, a fuse, and BBs for shrapnel during this training. It didn't detonate, but again, This informant has a video of this that he's provided to the FBI. They also had silencers for their rifles, and they shared photos and videos of this on Facebook that included the informant. There's also another recording of a meeting where they talked about attacking a Michigan State Police facility and also suggested shooting up the governor's vacation home. Said that he didn't want to go after the Capitol. He said he was cool with going after the governor's vacation home, however, even if it only resulted in destruction of property. They have, in each one, it says that they have audio recordings and sometimes videos of all of these meetings. This is nuts. So they decided their best opportunity to abduct her would be when she was arriving at or leaving either her personal or vacation home or a summer residence. Damn, so this lady has 3 houses. They called it a snatch and grab. Grab a whole bunch of bad words that someone would be mad at me for saying, I'm sure, and hold her for a trial. Wow, they wanted to get a realtor to help them find the exact location of the vacation home and collect information on the surrounding homes and structures. Discuss the importance of knowing the layout of the yard, homes, and security. They said they needed a map of the surrounding property and gates, plumbers and electricians to help them read the blueprints. And they tried to recruit an engineer or IT guy, a demo guy, and other operators. But that's interesting. On July 27th, someone asked in an encrypted group chat how everyone was feeling about this idea, and no one answered. So that's kind of interesting. That's really interesting, actually. It sounds like, not like a lone wolf, but it sounds like maybe people were not as invested in it as this Fox guy was. More audio recordings of trainings, group calls. In one of the calls, they stated that they already had one person to go to her house and knock on the door, and when she answers it, just cap her. Catch her walking into the building. Jeez. I feel like this is not stuff they should have talked about on Facebook, number one. Not that I'm condoning this in any way, but, you know, they had all this security of having this trap door hidden under a rug, and yet they talked about this stuff on Facebook. That seems pretty ridiculous. They did supposedly use... this just talks about how most of the time these types of people use encrypted online platforms and code words. Doesn't seem like there was much about that in this, except instead of saying make a bomb, they said make a cake, apparently. So that's, I mean, this keeps going on and on. We're not going to go through the whole thing because, I mean, this is a lot. At one point, they stopped on a highway bridge and looked at the underpasses to see for places where they could put an explosive charge, for example. So they were looking for places to plant bombs. They were surveilling her property. They were trying to get information on neighbors. This was pretty detailed, actually. On September 14th, the guy posted in the group's encrypted chat that he did not want the exercise to be the last week in October because it would leave insufficient time to execute the kidnapping before the national election on November 3rd. And so they agreed to use that time until the final training exercise to raise money for explosives and other supplies. They were trying to raise $4,000 for explosives, it looks like. And on October 2nd, they purchased an 800,000 volt taser, an encrypted chat message. And that's about where the evidence ends. They had all kinds of guns, tactical gear, explosives, it looks like. And so that is that, according to the FBI. So I saw that some people were putting in some super chats, so I want to make sure I get to those, and then we will jump to the interview. 28 days later says, I got my ballot in the mail today. Just wrote in Ron Paul. Let's go. Awesome. Good for you, man. Ron Paul is a national treasure. Joe Dufresne says, with Harris's cackle this time and Hillary's in 2016, are they wicked witches of the East and West? Well, I mean, Hillary Clinton scares me more than Kamala Harris, but Kamala Harris is still a very scary lady. Rose Blight says they were anarchists, Antifa, and anti-cop, not far right. I saw a few more come in. Trashman says, if they had succeeded, what would they have really done with Whitmer? No one would pay to get her back. So it sounds like they were planning on totally disrupting and dismantling the state government. They had all these plans to lay all these explosives in different areas and do all of this damage. And I mean, it sounds like they were going to have their own private trial, and execute her, maybe. I don't know, because it does say kidnapping. So kidnapping does sound like they would have wanted a ransom or something. But yeah, you're right. I don't think very many people would pay to get her back. John Thomas says somewhere in this is a FBI paid informant who probably suggested and or encouraged the attack. It's how the Alphabet Boys roll. I agree, like especially because of that part where it says that one guy was asking everyone about how they felt about the plan and no one answered. And it sounds like this guy was kind of the ringleader. I mean, and I do know that entrapment is a thing. Oh, Robbie is in. Hello. He said it sounds like Waco. It kind of does, doesn't it? And I mean, and really, you can't, I don't know. You sometimes have to take some of this stuff, I don't want to say a grain of salt, because I mean, with all of that evidence, if they have recordings and phone calls and videos and things, then it sounds like these plans were very real. But sometimes you have to question whether people were sort of pushed along, or motivations for uncovering things at certain times. I mean, if you look back, Robbie mentioned Waco. I mean, Waco, the whole really purpose of Waco was because like the ATF and FBI needed a win after Ruby Ridge, really, and they wanted to try to improve their reputation a little bit. And they were under some really tough pressure for that. So I don't know. Mr. Robert Pellet says, this is all the kind of stuff that libs talk about doing to our president on a daily basis. That is true. That is true. It is ironic. People are telling me hydration is wonderful. It is ironic that all these people that were like, you just want old people to die, were then hoping that an old guy died. It's just kind of funny. Thank you, Aaron Miller. And Richard is in. Actually, so Richard is bringing up the issue of the 25th Amendment. So we will jump over to that real quick, and then we'll pop in the interview, because I said that I was going to be doing this other issue first. But anyways, so the 25th Amendment. This is new news as of today, pretty much. So we'll pop up this article from The Hill. So there is some controversy around this for multiple reasons. Basically, House Democrats have unveiled a bill that would create a panel to decide whether or not the president is fit for office at any given time. Basically, they would be gauging the president's capacity to be able to do his job and be able to decide whether or not he needs to be removed. So I think that they're in recess right now. So it's unlikely, I think, that this would get voted on and pushed through and make it through the election. But nonetheless, there is a question as to the purpose of this bill. So the panel that they would be creating would be permanent, and they say that it would apply to future administrations. According to The Hill, though, it is still a clear shot at President Trump, and this is interesting, whose treatments for the coronavirus have raised questions about their effects on his mental acuity. And this stems from he was on some steroids for his treatment of COVID, which is a pretty common treatment for a lot of things, especially when there is, breathing and inflammation of the lungs and brachia and things like that involved. Prednisone is a pretty common treatment, so is steroid inhalers. So, that's no big deal. But steroids do have a known side effect of messing with people's moods, right? So I've actually had clients that came in that were normal, everyday people, and then they go on prednisone and suddenly they're presenting manic, as in like bipolar. Never had a manic episode a day in their life, but actually the prednisone triggered it. It wasn't a real manic episode. It's whenever there's like a medical condition causing it, it is disqualified as like a true episode of XYZ. But nonetheless, prednisone is known to do that. It can increase anxiety in people. It can really ramp up like OCD symptoms, for example. It can do all kinds of crazy things. It can prevent you from sleeping. It can basically look like you're on crack for like your 10-day period or however long that you're on it. So it is possible for that to create mood swings. But now Nancy Pelosi is saying that, well, his steroids are linked to mood swings, so it could be affecting his decision making. Now, the thing with this, though, is, isn't there supposed to be this system of checks and balances that prevent the president from like making big, wide, crazy decisions, especially if they're sick? Doesn't he have full panels of advisors and different people around him that could be advising him on these things? And she told Bloomberg News on Thursday that the president is, shall we say, in an altered state right now. To me, that just sounds like an excuse. It sounds like a load of crap. I don't think that that's much of a legitimate complaint or concern. I think that it's just another thing, another icing on the cake. But nevertheless, Nancy Pelosi is saying that his drug regimen to treat COVID is making him unfit for office. So the new legislation that they proposed would invoke the 25th Amendment, which empowers Congress to create a body which, working with the vice president, can remove a president deemed unable to discharge the powers and duties of this office. Now, what's interesting is when Pelosi or any of the Democrats are talking about this bill or talking about the 25th Amendment, they emphasize this panel, right? And the power of the panel. They tend to shy away from the fact that the vice president would have to be working in concert with Congress to actually make this panel happen and to remove a president. So while they're saying, you have people saying that this is about Trump, you have Democrats in the House saying that this is about Trump and that this is their ace in their back pocket in case Trump wins to get him out. They're also suggesting that they're going to try to do it even before the election to get him out. But then you have Pelosi saying this is not about President Trump. He will face the judgment of the voters. Take that or leave it. I don't know how much you can really take with any stock what Nancy Pelosi says. She could just be saying that. So nonetheless, it would require, if Trump were in office and they would try to enact this, it would require Pence to agree that Trump was not fit for office. And then he would then basically make the final decision as to whether or not Trump would be removed if this panel took place. Very unlikely. I think what is more likely is that this is sort of their backdoor way of saying, like, okay, if Biden wins, This is how, if he was unfit because has all of these gaffes and these issues and says all of these crazy things and sniffs small children and does all of this crazy stuff, it would be their way of getting him out and putting in place Kamala, for example. And in fact, I was listening to Tim Pool earlier, and he was pointing out, if you go to like Etsy or any of those types of websites, there are these Kamala 2020 signs going around that has like Kamala Harris 2020 in big letters, and next to it, it's got a little tiny Biden. And these things are like selling out. They're one of the top best selling items on Etsy right now, which is pretty ridiculous. So, I mean, it is entirely possible that this would be more of a ploy to oust Biden out and put Harris in, were Biden to win the election. And it's interesting too, because right now confidence in the American election system is at an all-time low. The stats are lower than they have ever been, which is really concerning. So there are people on both sides of the aisle for different reasons that think that this election is not going to go off without a hitch. So according to The Hill, the proposal has no chance of being enacted with Congress on recess and the Senate and White House currently controlled by Republicans. Indeed, GOP leaders have already dismissed it as a political stunt. And it does sound like a political stunt or virtue signaling, but as we've talked about on the show before, 538 does put the Democrats winning in Congress during this election. At the very least, they are still favored to win seats in the House and Senate and take over a small majority, but a majority nonetheless. Hypothetically speaking, if the Democrats took control of the Congress, they could then put in this bill and pass it and then go from there. Mitch McConnell says that it is absolutely absurd. And he says, again, right here in this last 3 weeks before the election, I think those kinds of wild comments should be largely discounted. But the bill marks another effort by Democratic leaders to energize their base ahead of the November 3rd election. So, I mean, you could look at it just as a way for them to try to get more voters out, while feeding accusations that Trump, already under fire for his fitful response to the coronavirus pandemic, has become increasingly erratic under treatment for his own case of COVID-19. I mean, he's been out of the hospital for only a few days. Like, what has he done in that time that's been excessively erratic or more erratic than usual? Honestly, I mean, I haven't seen anything in the headlines. I mean, if there has been something, please let me know. So then Pelosi on Thursday had previewed the legislation's unveiling. She was vague about what prompted her decision to do it now, 25 days before the election, but hinted it was related to the White House's refusal to reveal when Trump last tested negative for the virus. That is interesting. So I wonder if she would try to make the argument that COVID would prevent him from doing presidential duties. I'm not really sure what she could do about that after the fact, once he is getting treatment and recovered. But why is the White House not telling the country that important fact about how this spread and made a hotspot of the White House? She asked. Trump, of course, fired back that it's Pelosi and not him who should be examined for fitness of office. I mean, he's not wrong. Nancy is pretty nutty. Kayleigh McEnany went on Fox and Friends and called it absurd. And again, said the only one who needs to be looking at the 25th Amendment is Nancy Pelosi herself. Even before its release, the legislation was already stoking accusations from the president's Republican allies that Democrats, frustrated with Trump's victory in 2016, are doing everything in their power to overturn the wishes of voters in that election, a charge frequently lodged during Trump's impeachment. And then we have some tweets, Rep. Mark Green saying that Pelosi is trying to stage a coup. It's also likely to fuel the GOP argument that Joe Biden, Trump's 77-year-old Democratic challenger, lacks the vigorous health and mental sharpness to make sound decisions on behalf of the country. Yeah, as far as I know, he still hasn't done a cognitive test, right? He has still been refusing that. So the 25th Amendment was ratified in 1967 in response to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and it allows for the president to cede the authority of the office voluntarily when he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. In such a case, the vice president assumes the powers of the presidency. That scenario occurred twice under the President George W. Bush, who transferred power briefly to Vice President Dick Cheney in 2002 and again in 2007. He was undergoing colonoscopies in both cases. Well, I don't remember that. Granted, I wasn't really paying attention to politics much back then, but I do not remember that. Interesting. But the 25th Amendment also empowers other Washington policymakers to usurp the president's powers involuntarily when questions of those same incapacities arise. In such cases, the vice president can join forces with either a majority of the administration's top cabinet officials or with such other body as Congress may by law provide. So that is why I think that ultimately this wouldn't work with Trump, because I don't think that Pence would do that. Maybe I'm wrong. So under this new bill, the new panel, dubbed the Commission on Presidential Capacity to Discharge the Powers and Duties of Office, that's a mouthful, would feature 17 members. So it would be 4 physicians, 4 psychiatrists, which is interesting because there's this thing going around Twitter right now where some rando psychiatrists are saying that Trump needs to be put on a psychiatric hold for leaving the hospital after he was discharged and treated for COVID. It makes me wonder if any of those psychiatrists are real psychiatrists, because nothing that they're talking about is actual grounds for putting anyone in a psych hold, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. It would also include 8 former high-ranking executive officials to be chosen from a pool of former presidents, former vice presidents, former surgeon generals, and former heads of the state, treasury, defense, and justice departments. Those 16 figures would be decided by the bipartisan leaders of both chambers of Congress, and the 17th member would, for some reason, randomly be named by the other 16. So that is the dealio with all of that. I definitely... It sounds to me like they are trying to gear up for a Harris presidency rather than a Biden presidency, or turn a Biden presidency into a Harris presidency, is what I think. I saw some super chats come in and now they're not popping up on that screen. So let me reload over here. And then we will jump into the next thing. So let's see here. I missed this one earlier. Ken Davis said that he can't stay long, taking the wife out to dinner. Thanks. Well, thank you for your contribution. I hope you have a good dinner. Well, had a good dinner, because you'll be watching this after the fact. Let's see. B. Harris says, I wish Massachusetts wasn't so terrible. I feel for you. Here's some pity cash. Well, luckily I'm not there anymore, which is an excellent, excellent thing. Let's see. Here we go. CVA Buck. So I had this conspiracy theory idea myself. I think that it is deep tinfoil, but you never know. So CVA Buck says, deep tinfoil, the 25th isn't for Trump because Pence won't play along. But if Biden wins, 25th plays, puts Harris in the White House. Harris names Clinton as vice, and then Clinton's Harris, President Clinton by 2022. I think that's it's possible. I think it's really unlikely, but you never know. I mean, if the Clintons did in fact Clinton Harris, we would never know, right? She would just, have a convenient accident or something, or, be left alone in a jail cell too long or something. Mr. Rover Pilot says the panel would be a win-win for leftists. Remove Trump if or when he wins, and remove Biden as soon as possible if he were to win. To install Harris as president, Harris would then be in control. I agree. Gito463 says, unrelated, have you heard Yelp now has a racist flag for businesses? Matt Walsh has a video about it. No, I did not. You know what? I've got a to-do list here. I'll put it on the to-do list. So it's Matt Walsh. Okay. Matt Walsh video. I have so many things that I want to cover in videos, but we'll see if we can get to it. And Dragon's Talon 1001 says, in other news, Liberty Doll is an amazing angel. Over to you, Jesse, for the weather. Thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet. Very kind. All right. So now we will get to, so this, I will predicate this by saying, you guys will be able to tell because the outfit is different. The interview I have with Jo, that I'm going to play for you guys, is not a live interview. We actually did it after the debates. We were actually supposed to do it before the debates, and we had some technological difficulties. So we actually did it after, which was really cool because it meant that I was able to get some extra time with her. So let me pull that up for you guys. And I think it was really, I had a fun time. She is so nice. And what was really cool is, oh, that's weird. Oh, I clicked on it. Where did it go? There we go. Okay. So let me move it over here. She was really nice. And what's really cool too is, so we did the interview and we chatted for a couple minutes. And then she told me that she had to go do schoolwork because this woman is on the campaign trail all day. And they did a bunch of interviews and is still teaching psychology over at Clemson, which is crazy to me. Crazy, crazy. So, let me make sure to get the sound on. So hopefully, unfortunately, we're going to have to do the thing where I put the microphone in front of the speaker. So you'll have to get it that way. But I will be releasing this interview as a separate video tomorrow. So this as a separate video will be on the channel for tomorrow for anyone else who doesn't like the way the sound is or something. All right. So let me go over to here. And here we go. Right. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. I have a very special guest today that has agreed to give me some time. So we have Jo Jorgensen today, who is running for president on the Libertarian ticket for 2020. So thank you, Jo, for taking some time for us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
So I had Spike on my show last week, and we had him for a whole hour, despite a rental car and flight fiasco. And I'm sorry for holding him up and freaking security out a little bit. But we covered a lot of policy questions with him. So I have for you some more, I guess, sort of current event and philosophical type questions. And I'm just going to pound them out because I know we don't have a ton of time. So today there was a really cool article that came out from Reason that was reporting that you are actually polling higher than the gap between Trump and Biden in 4 key states, which is really awesome. But it could also provide some evidence for folks that like to call you a spoiler candidate. So what do you say to the folks who claim that a third-party vote is a wasted vote or a vote for whichever candidate they're hating at that time?
Well, I say the only way that I'm a spoiler is if they don't do their jobs. You know, Trump promised to come in. He said, I'm an outsider, I'm a businessman, I know how to balance the budget, I know how to cut spending, I can cut the deficit, cut the debt, and oh, by the way, I'll bring the troops home too. And he's done none of that. So had he kept his promises, I think he would have won in a landslide, but he didn't. And so now the people are looking around going, well, is there anybody else around here? So if I am a spoiler, then I hope it gets them doing what they should be doing, following through on their campaign promises. Well, except for, I only watched a few minutes of the debate tonight, but I heard lots of promises of, we're going to take your money from you and we're going to spend it for you. So I don't want those campaign promises, but the outside businessman, I know how to get things done. That would be a nice promise.
That would be a nice promise. And you did just mention the trillions and trillions of dollars that we owe China and whoever else at this point. So what would your administration do to try to cut back the national debt?
Well, yeah, the first thing when you're digging yourself into a hole is to stop digging. So we need to stop digging. And I would look at, now let me preface this, okay? We absolutely have to have a strong military to protect our borders, to protect our shores. However, we shouldn't be protecting every other country out in the world. We're in 160 different countries. So I would bring the troops home, by the way, and turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral, where we protect our borders. And we could save about $700 billion there. We spend more on the military than the next 7 countries combined. So if we cut our military budget by 2/3, then we would still be tied for the highest spending country on this planet.
Wow, that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And in this question, I don't know, I think it's kind of timely and interesting because you're wearing red, but I know that you saw this because I saw you respond to it on Twitter. So as you've seen, red sweater guy, Ken Bone, the guy that went viral in 2016 for being like the quintessential undecided voter, actually announced on Twitter today that he has voted for you and you have his vote. And the Biden camp responded with these really ridiculous accusations that the media had somehow radicalized him into making a toxic and reckless decision. So if you
wait, can I interrupt? You mean the media that is 92 or 96% Democrat whenever you take the poll? Yeah, that media. Okay.
That same media that put out that weird commercial with naked celebrities today saying vote Democrat. Oh yeah, it's bizarre. The same people that said the Libertarian Party was a joke because that one guy did strip at the convention that year.
And you know what? That is ridiculous. And so was David Duke. And so was a number who, by the way, David Duke was both a Democrat and Republican, big Ku Klux Klan guy. We had that Ku Klux Klan guy in Virginia, somewhere around there. So yeah, let's talk about weird guys.
But so if you won, given that liberty is so radical, what would this radical America look like for the average American?
Well, they would get to keep their money and make their own decisions. And I think one reason that we are so at odds with each other, why we're so polarized, is because we have to all vote basically on one thing. We have to all agree on something, and then it's one size fits all, which really doesn't fit all. And so if you look at education, let's say you want prayer in your school, or masks or online or whatever, and your neighbor doesn't. Well, the way it works with Democrats and Republicans is you have to go to the ballot box. Well, first you gotta each support your own candidate, send in money, campaign contributions, put out yard signs, get all your friends to vote, and then comes election day, and one of you is going to win and one of you is going to lose. And then, somebody's not happy. With the libertarian way of doing things, you get to keep your resources. So if you want your kid to go to a school of prayer, you can. If your neighbor doesn't, he can send his kid somewhere else. So you would actually be able to make your own decisions in education, healthcare, retirement. Right now we've got the federal government in just about everything. And, people wonder why we're so polarized. I mean, imagine if the government said, okay, we're going to vote today. Are we all going to be vegetarians, or are we all going to eat steak? And, people say, well, geez, that's ridiculous. Well, think about vaccinating your kid, or your kid's education, or your health care. I mean, that's very personal. Why should the federal government be making every one of those decisions?
I mean, that's a really good point. And I think that with COVID, it's bringing up some interesting opportunities for the libertarians. Governor Baker in Massachusetts just passed a mandatory flu vaccine for anyone attending any sort of school or nursery or anything under the age of 30, even if you're doing online school. And surprisingly, the people of Massachusetts stood up and are suing him, which is something I never thought I'd see in a million years.
I never thought I would see freedom lovers in Massachusetts. So that's great. At least they went too far. And let me quickly add, by the way, I vaccinated my 2 daughters, and my daughter vaccinated my grandchild. So I personally believe in vaccines, but to tell other people that they have to put something, the government is requiring that you put something in your body. I mean, I can't even believe that that's being considered in a free country.
Absolutely. So here's a popular and more traditional debate question. What would you do in your first 100 days as president?
Well, day one is bringing the troops home. And that's something I can do without Congress. Part of the problem is a lot of what I'd like to do, I got to get Congress to help me, but I can bring the troops home on my own. I would work very hard to get rid of the Department of Education. I would start dismantling. I would start, explaining there's a new sheriff in town. And oh, by the way, all the stuff that you've been doing, not constitutional. You shouldn't be doing it. So we would just start dismantling everything. By the way, the first 90 days, we would hope to get everybody back from the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge one. Huge one. So you just mentioned, people, what they're doing. Right now, things are unconstitutional and Congress gets in the way of things and da-da-da-da. So what are your thoughts on in Pennsylvania and now in Michigan? There are 2 separate courts. There was the Michigan State Supreme Court, and then the federal court in Pennsylvania ruled that these lockdowns are unconstitutional. And the governors, both in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, kind of just gave the middle finger and said, well, we're going to continue to do this because we're going to appeal it anyways.
I mean, here's the irony about these lockdowns, about putting us all under house arrest. And 3 of my grandparents are immigrants, but one of my grandfathers came here from Sweden, and his family came here for freedom. And look, over in Sweden, they were allowed to continue to go to restaurants and shopping and schools, and we're all under house arrest. I mean, we're supposed to be the land of the free. How can that be? How ironic. So I'm glad that people are getting upset. It's just amazing how, when power gets to your head and you're a governor, mm-hmm. that all of a sudden now you're king or queen. You're no longer a governor, which is supposed to, kind of mean the opposite thing.
Mm-hmm. And so, of course, because you believe in liberty and civil rights and all of these things, the media isn't giving you a whole lot of attention. They tend to do that with the libertarian candidates. And, they're keeping you out of the debates. And even at one point, I read that the Cleveland police showed up to stop your debate event last week.
Technically, it was the mayor's office.
Oh, even better.
Because we had gotten permission from the police. They were like, okay, sure, fine. And then the mayor's office stepped in and was like, no. And what was funny is first they said, you can't use that sound system. We said, okay, fine, we'll use a different one. And then I forgot what was next on the chopping block. We said, okay, fine, we'll do that. And then they said, oh, and the chairs have to go. You can't sit. Okay, we're going somewhere else.
So given all of that, what keeps you energized in this campaign where other people might be really discouraged with all of this?
Well, first of all, the fact that somebody has to do it. As I mentioned, I am the grandchild of immigrants, and my grandmother used to explain to me how great our country was and how in the other country, that you didn't have the freedoms we have here. But also just the people that I go to see. I mean, the people in Cleveland were just amazing, and they were rather offended that I wouldn't be able to speak. So everybody's just been great on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And I especially liked sort of related at the beginning, the hashtag I'm with her that you co-opted.
Yeah, we didn't come up with that. Somebody else came up with that.
That was really good. Really good.
So yeah, because Hillary was like such a, well, actually, no, she's with us. Yeah, she's with us, right? Yeah, play on that. Play on I'm with her. Because, Hillary, of course, it had to be about her.
Of course. So this one is, I guess, a little bit more on the personal side, and I'm just personally curious. So I know that you are in the psychology field, and as we discussed before the call, I'm in the mental health field as well, and it tends to be really left-leaning, at least where I'm from. So I'm just curious if you got any sort of blowback or resistance from colleagues or coworkers or students when you announced that you were running as a libertarian.
No, well, first of all, I don't tell my students about it. Now, many of them find out anyway, but I'm rather surprised. Everybody's been very supportive. And I mean, I'm not surprised that they've been supportive. I was a little worried that maybe, because I had to get both the department chair's permission as well as the university president's permission. And I thought for sure they would say, well, we don't want it to reflect poorly on the university. And what if you say something wrong? What if the parents get mad? You go out and say you should legalize drugs. You don't think we're going to get complaints from parents? I really thought that they would be like, not so fast. But no, the president of the university said, I think it's important that people run for office. So good job. So it was great.
That's awesome.
And now, I don't know how many people in my department are supporting me politically, but they're all, they're great people. I can't imagine a better job. I can't imagine better coworkers, and it's just been awesome. But, the bigger problem is just the field of psychology in general. I teach social psychology, and there was some poll, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but, something like out of a group of people, something like 600 said they're all liberal, and like 12 said they were conservative, something like that, because they were pointing out, okay, social psychology, we deal with discrimination and prejudice and stereotype, and perhaps we're doing that in our own field without realizing it. And like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that, because they all just, kind of go along as a pack.
I like to tell a story, and I've told it on my channel a few times, of when I worked at an agency. It was during the Obamacare era, and there was this whole thing where Obamacare was pushing providers to violate HIPAA in order to report on gun ownership. And I remember I raised my hand and answered some question in a staff meeting, and they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, well, I'm a gun owner. And then everyone gave me the widest berths in the hallways after that. And I was like,
right. It's like,
well, I guess I can't talk about that.
No. Well, I'm a gun owner too, by the way.
Well, and I understand that you're a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment.
You couldn't be stauncher than I am, I don't think. So, in fact, gun owners of Maine, I think it was, that I got an A rating. And,
wow.
I think Trump got a B and everybody else kind of failed, if I remember correctly.
I usually do.
But I would personally get rid of every gun law that's been passed in the last 100 years and prevent the red flag laws from being passed. And, remember, not that you remember it happening, but from the history books, when George Wallace stood on the steps of University of Alabama not letting Black students in, and the federal government stepped in and said, no, they've got constitutional rights. Well, I would go to states like, for instance, if Virginia had passed that law, I would have gone to states like that and treated them as George Wallace and said, no. This is a constitutional right. They have the right to own guns. So I would treat it very seriously.
Good. I think that in itself would win a lot of votes. Now, so I know that I was told I really only got you for like 15 minutes. So I have one last question that I'm going to ask so I don't monopolize you too much. And I feel like this is a personal favorite question among a lot of libertarians. And that is, how did you become a libertarian?
Well, I read Animal Farm in grade school.
In grade school? Wow.
Well, it was assigned. That's, before the Department of Education came along and destroyed education, that's what we did. We read Animal Farm in grade school. Then I looked around at politics and went, now I get why that book was written. And when I was finishing up my last year of college, for my first chunk of education, I heard a libertarian on the radio. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one who believed in that. So I immediately went to the next, Libertarian Party meeting they had. And I've been in the movement now for 40 years.
Wow. Very awesome. Very awesome. Well, like I said, I don't want to monopolize too much of your time. I've already gone over my limit. Your guy was like 10 minutes.
Well, I had fun, so that's great. And
me too. I don't want to make security come knocking on your door too. So
okay, well, have a great day.
Thank you, and thank you so much for coming on and having a chat.
Oh, well, at least let me say, go to jo20.com. That's jo20.com. And let me just quickly mention that about 75% of our volunteers are from outside the party. So it just shows how many people out there are looking for something different. And after the first debate, my website slowed to a halt because there was such increased traffic. People going, oh my gosh, is there anybody else out there? So I'd love for your viewers to go out and look me up.
Absolutely. I will make sure that they have that link.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Great being here.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right. So that was the interview. Hopefully the sound was okay in the speakers and everything. Like I said, I will be releasing that as a separate video tomorrow. Belligerent Instigator says, everyone who votes for Jo Jorgensen, if Biden wins and passes gun control, bans 90% of guns, I want you to rethink the effectiveness of your strategy. So honestly, I mean, bottom line, do I think that Jo would win? No, I don't. Jo Jorgensen, no, I don't think that she would win. I don't think that there would be the votes for that. But the whole point right now, they say the point is they're in it to win it. But the reality is, if you live in a state that is always going to go blue or always going to go red. So take for Massachusetts, for example. Massachusetts electorally always going to be blue no matter what. I don't think that it could ever be anything except for blue. If you were to vote for Trump in Massachusetts, it's not really going to make much of a difference. Really, it will be null and void by the Electoral College, right? But if you were a third-party voter and did decide to vote third party, it would at least come through in the breakdown of the popular vote, right? And the goal would be to get 5% of the vote nationally, because that's what it would take to get put into polls, to be recognized as a party by the government, to be automatically put on the ballot in 50 states, and to get a certain amount of money to put towards campaigns and future campaigns at that point. So really, the vote for a third party is more of a long-term plan, where it would just be the goal of eventually getting us more choices in the next go around. If you live in Massachusetts and you vote for Trump, it's not going to do anything either way, sadly, unfortunately. And I mean, that's true for a lot of other states. I mean, I don't think that, for example, Connecticut is going to suddenly go blue, or Maryland is going to suddenly go blue, or red, rather. I don't think Connecticut's going to suddenly go red. Maryland's not going to suddenly go red. California isn't going to suddenly go red. So, I mean, if you live in a state like that and you do prefer the third party candidate, I don't think that it is a wasted vote to vote third party. That is my opinion, at least. Let's see. Robert Graham says, same thing. I'm voting for Joe because my vote for Trump won't mean a hill of beans in New York. Right. Because, I mean, when it comes down to third-party votes, it's about getting a percentage of the popular vote to get future ballot access and party access and campaign funds and blah, 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 and get into the debates. Now, I've seen a lot of people in this chat and during the debate chats and during the chat with Spike asking how come Joe and Spike aren't at any of the debates. And that's because I believe it was in I don't remember if it was 2016 or 2012. But in one of those election years, the FEC actually changed the rules, the qualifying rules to get someone in a debate. So now, in order to be invited to the debates, you have to hit consistently 15% in the polls, and it has to be an aggregate of certain polls that they pick and choose from. It's an aggregate of 5 randomly chosen polls. So one of the problems is some states never even put third-party candidates in their polls when, you know, they ask people and put out polls. Another problem is that last election cycle, actually, there was a couple points in time where Gary Johnson did have the poll numbers, but when that happened, the people in charge of the debates and the aggregating picked the polls where he wasn't polling high enough to get the numbers to get invited to the debates. And there also has been times where people hit the numbers and still weren't invited into the debates. So that is unfortunately why we never see third-party candidates in the debates, because they changed the rules and now they're still not even playing by their rules. Unfortunately, yes. Squid Monkey says you have to be invited based on numbers, but then they pick and choose their numbers. That's exactly what it is. And yes, Tim Allen says what Liberty Doll is talking about is why voting third party is important. John Morgan says, anyone seen those goalposts recently? And I mean, they did the same thing. Yep, Tada says that they did the same thing to Tulsi. They did it to Bernie Sanders last time around. They did it to Ron Paul in 2008 and in 2012. And I've talked, you know, so when they last minute move things around and change the goalposts, move the goalposts around, change the rules, it doesn't really surprise me, because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse with this sometimes, but I've talked about that time where I went to my local caucus for Ron Paul and they changed the rules right there on the spot in front of everybody. They were handing out ballots that were pre-filled out for Mitt Romney and the Mitt Romney delegates. And if you took a blank ballot, they said that they wouldn't accept any ballot that had anything written on it. So then your blank ballot that you were writing on, they nullified. Your Mitt Romney ballot that you crossed out Mitt Romney and put someone else in was nullified. And they decided that while they were counting the votes on stage. And it was a huge uproar. And it was a crazy thing to witness. And so because of that, I am never surprised, never, ever surprised when they last minute changed the rules. Kermit Loves Bacon says they changed the rules years ago after Ross Perot won a large number of votes. No, I think it might have started then. Rod Miller says, I live in New Jersey. I've been noticing more Trump-Pence bumper stickers than Biden-Harris. I'm hoping that it's not just me noticing this new trend. I'm in South Carolina now, so I see tons of Trump stuff everywhere. But you do every once in a while see a Joe Biden sign. And what's really strange is there's some guy here that's running for state Congress, I believe. And he's the head of some initiative or organization called Put Down the Guns Young People. And it's all supposed to be about, gun safety and keeping them out of the hands of children and making sure that parents keep all their guns locked all the time and all of these things. But it's sort of like a weird thing to see here in South Carolina, and I don't trust it, and I don't know if that's just from my experience as a former Massachusetts resident, or if it is actually disingenuous. Not really sure. So I guess I might have to do a little bit of research on that. A few more super chats come in. So I'm going to grab those, and then we will finish up. Let's see. Jesse Meek says, and for the weather in South Carolina, it has been much brighter these last few weeks for some unknown reason. Over to you, Cap and Mac, for today's sports update. You guys are cute. And then Jesse Meek says he's got to go. Catch the rest tomorrow. Have a nice weekend, all and all. Well, thank you. Thanks for the fake news weather reports. Gito463 says he lives in a college town, so which signs he sees depends on what part of the city he's driving through. Vince DeBona says he lives in North Carolina, apparently too close to the city. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see too many political signs overall where I am. But the ones that I do see are largely Trump. So that's that. And then David Neal says, on Fridays at an intersection near where I live, there's a group of Trump supporters that gather at the Bob Evans at the intersection. The group seems to be getting bigger. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, definitely, quite honestly, I did not get my driver's license here in time to register to vote, so I won't even be able to vote this year, it looks like. But I definitely like Joe for sure, but I would much prefer Trump over Biden. I can say that for sure. Biden terrifies me. Kamala terrifies me. Big scary. And Brad the Magnificent says, see you next time. And people are telling me to go and roll my D20s for initiative. And my aunt says she loves me. Love you too. All right, guys. So that is it for today. I have to go finish my dinner as is tradition and then log on to my D&D call. So that is it for this week. I know I've been saying this, but I legitimately do have some regular short form videos on the docket that should be up by the end of the weekend, Monday latest. And of course, I'll put up the Jo Jorgensen interview tomorrow as its own separate video. And then we will be back to getting things back on track. So everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for all the super chats and the thumbs up and the comments and being here and hanging out and keeping the chat lively. And I will see you in the next one.